Good day, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Military and Foreign Affairs Network. I am your host, the voice of reason. Today, we are entering day 139 of the ongoing war between the Russian Federation and the forces of Ukraine. The main fighting right now continues to be obviously in the eastern sector of operations, running from Sloviansk down to Bakhmut, as well as continued exchanges of heavy artillery to the west and northeast, really along the entire southwestern front between Mykolaiv and Kherson. We are also seeing and hearing reports that the Russians could be preparing for several major river crossing operations in the vicinity of areas east of Sloviansk and north of the M3 highway along the Donets main river area. And this is the area here I'm tracing with my cursor. I know there has been some comments in which individuals say they can't see the river, but there is a river there, and the front line runs across the entirety of at least the northern sector of this area, runs across the Donets River. And then obviously as you go south of there, the Russians have achieved major crossings west of Lysychansk. Now, I talked about that I believe the Russians would continue on pressing west of Lysychansk towards Sloviansk, ending up just in front of the main M3 highway. Now, there's some indications that may indicate that the Russians may be preparing for additional river crossings to speed up operations against the Ukrainians. Now, I would say I would take that with a grain of salt. I still believe that it would be more prudent for the Russians to press east to west as opposed towards Seversk, as opposed to trying to make some sort of major river crossing across the Donets River. We have seen the Russians attempt that before, and on at least 1 to 2 occasions, it did not end well for them. And one of those big issues for the Russians continue to be two things. One, the active intelligence that is being provided by the NATO allies directly to the Ukrainians. For all intents and purposes, the Ukrainians are getting real-time, both satellite and other intelligence from E3 aircraft that are able to monitor at very long distances Russian armored vehicle and troop movements towards the front line. Then another big issue for the Russians has been that the West, Germany, France, United Kingdom, United States, Sweden, has been providing some very, very accurate munitions for the 155 millimeter howitzers that the West has been providing. We have seen the Germans provide the smart 155 millimeter precision guided ordnance for the 155 millimeter howitzer. The French have provided the extra, and then obviously the United States has provided the Excalibur, and the Ukrainians have their own systems as well that they have been using in the ongoing conflict. But the big issue is the real-time information feeds of where Russian forces could be massing, and then that allows at times the Ukrainians to have calls for fire on these massing and buildups of Russian forces in these locales, and we saw that again in some of the previous river crossings that the Russians had attempted. Now, with that being said, we are seeing again the HIMARS and these other very, very accurate 155 millimeter systems being used. For the most part, we are seeing them being used in the southwest. It would appear that the Russians have a little bit less capability to conduct counter battery missions against Ukrainian forces, especially in areas near Mykolaiv and from Mykolaiv up north towards Kryvyi Rih in this area. And that's kind of what we're seeing in terms of what would be defined as Ukrainian counterattacks. We're not seeing large maneuver operations taking place by Ukrainian forces, but we are seeing these very skilled artillery units and batteries of the Ukrainian military, whether it be their own Soviet-era systems or updated systems that the Ukrainians have built themselves or have used from the pre-Soviet times or the post-Soviet collapse times. And then obviously the Western systems that have been delivered as well. They appear to be using more or less the Western systems west of the Dnieper River, and maybe using them a little bit less east of the Dnieper River, where they're more susceptible to both Russian counter battery fire and then obviously strikes by tactical aircraft. Another interesting development is we're hearing now that the Russians could be taking delivery of Iranian drones. Now, we have seen Iranian drones be deployed in other areas of conflict, such as Yemen. We have seen fairly successful Iranian strikes against targets inside of Saudi Arabia. And those systems appear to work very well at times, and then other times maybe not so much. We have seen, especially in the war taking place in the former state of Ethiopia, the Ethiopian Civil War, we have seen the Abiy Ahmed regime utilizing Iranian drones against Tigrayan and Oromo targets throughout the country. Now, we have heard that in some of those cases, those drones tend to lose connectivity and just probably are not as good as some of the Western drones, and may not be as good or on par possibly with some of the Chinese systems as well. But if the Russians do receive the Iranian drones in the amounts that some of the media reports indicate, it could impact the conflict in terms of just a new strategy by Russian forces. Obviously, the Russians do use drones. They probably have, they are not really kind of leading the way in drone warfare right now. That's obviously Western nations, and specifically we've seen the Turks use and develop some very good drone systems. Now, obviously, are the Iranians producing technology that mirrors what the Turks in terms of the TB2 Bayraktar? I would have to say no. It doesn't look like some of their optronics are on par with Western optronic systems that have been deployed, and especially those L3 Harris systems and other systems that have been deployed on the TB2 Bayraktar. But nonetheless, they do have a capability. It can hit targets. It's proven, meaning the Iranian systems have been able to hit targets in Saudi Arabia. And as we know, the Saudis have a fairly capable air defense network with the best systems money can buy now. Then you have to ask, how capable are the Saudis in terms of their personnel using that equipment? And based on personal experiences, I would say that the Saudis have proven to be relatively incompetent from time to time, depending on the unit that is deployed and the training and the continued training and familiarization with those systems. So very hard to say how these Iranian drones will perform over Ukraine, and then also you have to ask the question is why would the Russians be using this Iranian equipment? And it does obviously bring up some questions in terms of what's happening inside of Russia in terms of its drone capability. And it does, at least from the information we're hearing, they do seem to be obviously a few steps behind a lot of these Western countries in the deployment of their current drone capability. That's probably why they're trying to obtain more drone systems from Iran at this point. But again, not we're covering this conflict day by day, so obviously the information is in 24-hour increments. So in terms of how the Russians are deploying and the methodology of their attack against Ukraine, again, it's just right now we're not seeing the types of advances from Russian forces. We're continuing to see the Russians utilize just massive amounts of artillery, both precision guided and just massed fire systems as well. And what we'll do is we'll kind of go back from July 12th, just 2 days, so you can kind of see you can really see what the Russians are doing and how they're trying to just press ahead towards both Sloviansk, Kramatorsk, Bakhmut, and mainly the M3 highway. And at some point they're going to just overrun Seversk. And if I fast forward here 2 days, you'll kind of see exactly what I'm talking about. And they're just getting closer and closer, and that happens really every day. And then probably in 1 or 2 days, this beige area right here, which is considered contested, will become red, and then it eventually Seversk will be evacuated by Ukrainian forces, or the Russians will force their way into the town. It's not a very, very big town, but nonetheless, the Ukrainians do have some rather significant defensive positions both north along the Donets River and obviously east of Seversk as well. And what we'll do is we'll go into our map layer, satellite view, so you, the viewer, can see the size of Seversk. It's not a very, very large town, very minor town, mostly single family dwellings, not like the larger apartment blocks that you would see in several Donetsk with heavy industrialized areas, or even Lysychansk, which also has fairly significant of the Soviet era apartment blocks, and then more of the single family type areas as well. But Seversk predominantly is again single family homes with a minor kind of a downtown area, and then obviously the what looks to be is that railway through there. I'd have to look on another map to actually see that. But that's pretty much it in terms of what we're seeing right now for today. Obviously, we continue to hear about the possibility of this so-called Russian pause. I wouldn't, again, define it as that. They may be building up and preparing the battlefield and continuing to strike and moving forces for what could be another major uptick in operations in terms of the maneuvering of forces both to the north of Sloviansk, from the north towards the kind of the southeast, and then obviously from east to west as well. But very, very tough position for Ukrainian forces, but at the same time, we do hear about these continued attacks by Ukrainian forces on Russian targets in kind of the deep battle space, several dozen kilometers to the east and southeast of Kherson against Russian targets. We know that this town was recently struck. The Russians are saying it was a fertilizer facility that was struck. The Ukrainians are saying it was a weapons depot. So you, the viewer, will have to decide what was hit and how it was hit. But obviously, given the distance, we're probably looking at some more extended range, multiple launch rocket systems that hit this town and possibly Russian targets in it. And then obviously, you have to consider the possibility that the HIMARS was used and or other Russian systems that the Ukrainians are in possession of, or Ukrainian manufactured weapon systems. And the Ukrainians do have the ability to produce some very long-ranged weapon systems that have been used throughout the conflict. So, as I talked about before, two industrialized nations that are going at it, and these are kind of the ramifications of such a war that we're seeing right now. But we'll continue to watch things, and as they continue to develop in the southwest, again, this rumored Ukrainian counterattack, and then in the actual Russian offensive that continues very much unabated towards Sloviansk, Kramatorsk, and Bakhmut. Again, thanks for everyone for joining us today, and we'll have more very, very soon.